Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of BTS Live. That's Behind the Scenes Live. I am Martin Patton and joined as always by my partner in crime, Mark Rogers. Hey Mark, how are you?
Doing great. It seems like it's been forever since we were on.
I know, right? It's been 2 weeks. So, and that seems forever. It does seem forever. I love doing these shows. So, the reason why we weren't on last week is I was in Austin for South by Southwest, and I can talk a little bit about that. I was mainly working, and we rented a house with some friends. The main reason that I want to go is to catch up with some friends. My wife is from the Philippines, so she had some former colleagues come over, and we rented a house and we had a good time. And it was great because normally with South by Southwest, the weather can be pretty weird. So it's either really cold or really warm, and then this year it was a little both. In the beginning it was kind of rainy and cool, and then the second half was really warm. I think it got up into the low 90s. I mean, that's very, very warm, even for Texas this time of year. So anyways, so how about you? What'd you do with your time off?
What did I do? My time off? You took time off. I didn't take time off. I took 45 minutes off from this show to work on other things. So... yeah, there was a whole lot of Mark Rogers TV and the Mark and Macy show and everything else I'm involved in going on besides that job I've got. So a lot of that. And trying to have fun and do some things in my social life in between.
Absolutely. Oh, no, absolutely. And I'm going to have to avoid looking over to the side here. I got the Blab up over here. And the thing with the Blab, and guys in the comments, the Blab YouTube video is about 15 seconds behind, and I got it muted. I can see the comments, so if I'm a little slow with the comments, you'll understand why. We are going to do a post show exclusively in Blab today, so that will be all Blab, and that'll be full interaction. So just so you guys know how the setup is, but hopefully this is giving you a better experience as far as the video goes. So. We started a little late. We had the Apple event, and I won't talk too much about that. I'll save that for later for Stephen Haywood's show, the Tech Buzz Weekly Roundup. I'll be a guest on with Stephen, and we'll be talking Apple. That starts at 5:30 for the pre-show Eastern Time, thetechbuzz.net. I know he also broadcasts to Blab, and if he's here, certainly pop the link in the Blab here so people can subscribe. So we'll talk about, I don't think there were any surprises, to be honest, just in watching, and I was surprised they got off early as they did. So, but we'll certainly talk about that. But anyway, South by Southwest, we went there. I didn't get a badge this time. You can't get a badge. It's rather expensive. So I didn't get a badge this time. And that seems to be a trend among a lot of people that go there. There's a lot of stuff that goes on outside the convention hall. And one exhibit I did go to was we have a friend that works at IBM, so we visited there. And really the theme I saw was VR was everywhere, and that's going to be a big thing coming up. And it'll be interesting how that, in the video world, how that gets implemented. You know, I could see a use case for video games, and augmented reality, especially when you're traveling, like if you wear some glasses and you might be on an unfamiliar area, and if you have signs that come up in front of you as far as giving you directions, I think that could be a use case. I saw a lot of robotics, especially IBM. Artificial intelligence was very, very interesting. They actually had a robot that played the old game rock, scissors, paper, so that was kind of cool. And a lot of real-time analytics and real-time communication, and that's a big theme too. IBM's very big into analytics, so I saw a lot of that as well. But I want to get on Mark. I guess maybe I'll go first here today.
Go to it. Lead on.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple themes here, about perseverance and consistency. And last time we were together here, we had major tech issues. For those of you who were watching 2 weeks ago, was bringing Mark in via Skype, and the Skype video seems to work pretty well, and you can see today it's working good. I'm not seeing any kind of audio issues this time, but I had a huge audio issue, And it was driving me crazy, so much so that for folks that were here, I couldn't even really do a show. So what I did was I kind of abandoned the show and kind of made it into a basically live troubleshooting session. And ended up being pretty good. I mean, I'm not sure if I even recorded the Blab itself, but I certainly did not put it out on YouTube. And the reason I bring that up is a lot of this stuff with video, it's so new and evolving so quickly that a lot of stuff can go wrong. And I think a lot of people on Blab can identify with me here, with the tech issues, and not just Blab, but any video. It's still technical. And almost no matter how much preparation you do, and we talk a lot about that, the importance of preparation, and that the 90-10 rule, I call it, where 90% of your work happens before you go on air, and then 10% is actually what people see. And you could do all that. In fact, Mark, when we get to him, and we can trade stories. Mark still works at ESPN, my former employer, and a lot of the work that happens at the highest network levels is all preparation for the possibilities that might exist. What people see at home is none of that. Usually, hopefully everything's going well. You see what you're supposed to see, and the backup plans never get implemented. But that's where most of the work happens. So, I think what's important here, and this is what we demonstrated 2 weeks ago, is you got to persevere and through problems, right? So how do you do that? Well, first of all, you got to recognize what the tech issue is. So we spent quite a bit of time 2 weeks ago trying to figure out what was going on. I thought I had everything covered, and Mark was getting this feedback, and I was sending, and we worked through it, and come to find out, the conclusion was I thought it was on Mark's end for the longest time. Probably for 3/4 of the time we were on, I thought Mark was the one having the issue. Mark, you remember that, right? I mean, I was like blaming you, and I mean, it's like, Mark, it must be on your side. Yes. What's going on?
Shots were being fired, but I was dodging them.
I know, right? It's like, it was crazy, But come to find out that it ended up being on my end, and it was really just an audio routing issue. And when you're doing this kind of high-level production, in order to get the good quality, you start introducing complexity to it, right? So there's a lot of other things that could go wrong or happen. So we persevered, and come to find out that it was just a mix minus issue, meaning that what I should have been doing is using mix minus. And what mix minus is to Mark is, in order for Mark to hear me, now how we're doing this show right now is I'm interacting with Mark on Skype, and Mark's watching me on Skype. And I'm sending Mark back, what I was doing 2 weeks ago is I was sending Mark back the program audio, meaning that all the audio that was going out online, I was sending back to Mark, including himself. And that's, you can imagine if he's hearing himself, that's where the feedback happens, right? So what I need to do, and what I'm doing today, is I set up what's called a mix minus, meaning that it's a full program mix, that's the mix part, and the minus part is minus his own audio. So I'm sending him back, and basically I have a pretty simple setup. So all I'm doing is sending him back my audio from my microphone right here. And I do that through my mixer, and I just use an auxiliary send. Basically it's like a sub-mix group, and I'm able to just put the volume up on that one, on whatever I want to send back to him, take a separate output from my mixer, then bring it in and send it over to Skype. And that's what Mark's hearing. So now that's why we're not having any issues this week, because I'm actually sending him the right audio. So he's hearing everything except his own voice. And then on the video side, I'm able to send him back the actual program video. So he's seeing the double box. He's seeing when I switch the cameras. And that's mainly, I'm using a capture card to do that. And I'm able to do that because Blab has this really cool drop-in feature now that I'm able to drop in the YouTube live video, which I'm streaming to anyways. So you guys on Blab can see this nice 16:9 high definition picture, nice sound, and it makes for a nice presentation, especially for a formal show. So recognize the issue, understand what went wrong. It's not good enough just to have a checklist. I know, Mark, I mean, we talk a lot about that, right? Where people want that quick and easy checklist. And that's all well and good, maybe like a quick, and I think you see this with a lot of tech gadgets, right? The quick start guide, because people think it's too complex. And that's all well and good to get started, but many people don't go back and read the manual. and understand why it actually works, right? And you have experience with this, right, Mark?
Well, I have experience from this from dealing with my own platform that you've helped me with, and emphasizing something that you've emphasized on here many times, that it's not good enough. Maybe it's good enough in the moment to have somebody tell you, click this, 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 and that, and you're going to be all set. But you know what happens the next time you come across that issue? You got to call that person back, and you don't understand why you did what you just did. So although I have eons to go in regards to what I need to know, I understand so much more today than I did 2 or 3 years ago, because Marty would say, okay, let's hang on just a second. I'm going to tell you why we're doing what we're doing, and I'm going to give you the backdrop of what the process is, and then take you through it, so you're going to understand why you're clicking the things that you're clicking to remedy this issue.
Yeah, I always hammer that home with you. And sometimes, like, a lot of people don't want to have the patience to understand, and it's like, oh, I'll do it later. Oh, I don't want to deal with that now.
And
but
that's always also, Marty, because the call's coming like 5 minutes before I've got a segment to record or a show or whatever. I'm like, just tell me what to do.
Exactly. I mean, and most people just don't want to, and it's okay. The quick start guides are okay to you, certainly, but then eventually you have to go back and read that and learn, especially if you want to be able to troubleshoot. And that's my third point is, I think the ability to troubleshoot is kind of a lost art, and I think with a lot of this technology, that's why we always say, understand how things work, make an effort to learn. Doesn't come easily, doesn't come quickly, but it's going to be a huge value to you down the road, because when things happen, and especially when you're doing live video, like most of the people in this room, a lot of them do shows, right? A lot of them are doing Blab shows, and a lot of them are doing video for the very first time or very new at it. And, it's great that people are willing to go out and do that, and you want to get started quickly. But I highly advise, I know it's a pain, but I highly advise you to really understand how things work. Because what's going to happen is, when you come across a issue or technical issue, and they're bound to crop up. It happens to me. You can ask Stephen Haywood. I mean, he is totally professional. You can ask all the pros. It happens. You can even at the ESPN level. I mean, Mark, we have stories, of things that go wrong all the time that are unforeseen. Happens at the highest levels. But again, especially folks that work at ESPN. You have some pretty smart people there that understand how things work, so that when things go wrong, you're able to attack the problem and troubleshoot properly.
Marty, you know what time of year this is? It's March Madness. So,
Yes.
We just had the women's regionals this past weekend. And so I'm going to walk a bit of a thin line and not divulge too much, of course. But Marty knows the situation. Once you're regionalizing a network that large with different games going to two different areas of the country. So for the first 2 rounds of the NCAA women's tournament, we're taking 4 games to 4 different regions of the country. Then we're also having a 5th region that catches the best game or the selected game if there's not a game of interest in that area. So we're simulcasting not being the right word, we're regionalizing 4 games, or actually 5 networks in one at the same time. And we had a huge issue with conflicting information going into Friday about work orders and frame stores and sources and audio routing and the whole deal. That took quite a bit of time to sort through the various emails and the color grid we used to get with various virtual channels
well.
and where they're supposed to go, and that's supposed to be gospel. Well, we figured out it wasn't necessarily gospel on that particular day, and all that needed to be sorted out. So one of those.
And also, the other thing happening this time of year is, and I believe ESPN still has the early rounds of the Masters, right?
Yes.
And we all know the first year what happened there with a little mix-up with frame stores, and again, at the network level, these are what's called high-profile events. And Mark, you know what I'm talking about with that, right? I mean, it's where all the executives; those are the events you're going to key in on. I remember being there the first year that ESPN got the Masters, and it was crazy because we had backups upon backups. It's a very, as you know, any of the golf fans out there, they know that it's a very prestigious event. It's the first major in professional golf, It's a very unique event because it's played at the same site every year. It's a private club. A lot of uniqueness about that event. Very prestigious. And so when ESPN got the early rounds, it's huge, and they still do. And I remember the first year there, it was a big mix-up with the feeds. So we had redundant feeds coming from remote, and there was some issue, Mark, I think, with the feed, as far as one feed being the main feed, the other feed being the test feed, and Master Control took the test feed instead, and they had the wrong video up online, and it was and Mark, I think it was only like 10 seconds. It was very short duration that they were on the main feed, but 10 seconds too long, right?
Yeah, and as you alluded to, when there's a major event, it's the World Series, it's a major bowl game, Super Bowl, Masters, there are so many different feeds coming into, you think about one feed going out to the audience for the event, but there are various reports coming in from various reporters and other live shots going on that may air on ESPN News or on SportsCenter or somewhere else. So there might be 27 different frame store feeds that are coming into the network. And so it's very confusing, or can be, in regards to which is the right one for this particular live shot, or for our case in our department, the actual event feed that's going out to the mass audience. And that can be quite confusing in terms of verifying those sources.
Yeah, so all this talk, this is the reason why we bring all this ESPN stuff up, is just to illustrate that this stuff happens at the highest levels. You can plan all you want, but when tragedy strikes, knowing your equipment, knowing your workflow, knowing why things happen, signal flow, all that stuff, and the pros on here will know that. The people that are doing more complex stuff know what I'm talking about. Knowing where things go where, so that when something happens, you can quickly identify the problem and come up with a solution. Now, at the ESPN level, you're talking literally, I think that wrong shot was up less than 10 seconds. And that might be an exaggeration. And they switched right away. But it was long enough that it got the attention of the executives, because it was such a high profile event.
And just to let you know about how this can be easily confused, the wrong shot they got on the air was the exact camera angle and camera shot during pre-production than the one that we were supposed to be taking. So it wasn't like we were seeing Jack Nicklaus on a wide shot on one and we were seeing a shot of the clubhouse on the other, and we could just talk to the AD at site and say, okay, what should we be seeing right now? They were the exact, you may have 27 feeds coming into the plant, and 8 of them might be this shot and 4 this shot, and so there's repeated feeds of camera angles during certain sections of live shots or shows. So it was the exact same camera shot, so that was verified, but it was the incorrect audio.
Yeah, you raise a very, very good point, Mark. People that aren't familiar with this type of work, it wasn't like the master control operator just took the wrong feed and it wasn't painfully obvious. Like you said, these are backup feeds. They happen to have the same video or same shot on both feeds, but one was designated as the main program feed for the event. The other one was designated as a backup. And frequently, Mark, they use the backup. They could be feeding other video down the line for SportsCenter or for other shows. And I think that's what happened there, where originally they had the same video on both feeds, and the master control operator simply took the wrong feed because he looked quickly, and there was some confusion about the frame store number that the feed they were going to take the air in master control. So, again, you can't over prepare for this stuff, right?
No, you can't. You really can't. And you can take those lessons down to a much smaller size and verify and confirm everything that you're doing before going to air, something that I'm learning myself.
Oh, absolutely. And really, so once you troubleshoot a situation, and again, knowing how things work contribute to that. So once you get through there, then it's a matter of, okay, you come up with a solution, now you got to test it and then implement it. So bringing it back to what we experienced 2 weeks ago with this show and all the audio issues I was having, sending the audio back to Mark through Skype, I was able to identify the issue, all right? And then when I got back from Austin, I was able to put that solution in place. I had a solution in my mind. I was like, okay, if I need to do a proper mix minus, so I need to send Mark all the audio except for himself and make sure that works. So then I was able to set up a test call with Skype and actually test it. And does it really work? So luckily I have multiple computers here, and I just did a Skype call with myself and actually tested the signal flow to make sure that, okay, is it being sent? Do I have it right? Am I thinking this thing through? And then, okay, the test worked. Now we implement for today's show, and so far we're having good luck and we're having good results. But again, it's all because of perseverance on the tech side. Is don't let these little troubles hang you up as far as doing your shows. I mean, and if we bring it down to the Blab level, Blab is a wonderful platform because it gives you all these tools right there to get started with video, and you don't need a lot of technical knowledge. You don't need a lot of equipment. You need a computer and a webcam and a mic. That's about it. Very simple to get started. And again, we talked about it on previous shows where that's the main stumbling block for people is just getting started, right? So if the barriers are low, you'll actually be more apt to do it. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So if you understand how things work, you're able to identify, okay, where's the issue? Oh, it's my end, or maybe it's a bandwidth issue. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, obviously, with live streaming video. But knowing that, then you're able to implement, okay, what is the fix? How do I troubleshoot this? And then you're able to test it and implement. So that's very, very important. Mark, the next thing I want to touch on here is I said perseverance and consistency. I want to talk about the consistency part, especially about content creation. And I'm going to bring up a couple examples here. We've been doing the show now. We call this episode 17. This is really the 18th week, but last time I just threw out of the books. I didn't even record it. It was a disaster. So I'm calling this like take 2. I was gonna put that in the title, but I figured out I made it. We're blabbing. So, but it really is take 2 of episode 17. Go ahead, Mark.
According to Leland Best, it's out there. He's got the link out there. He's caught it. It's out there for people to learn from. So
Leland. Oh boy, that is trouble. Yeah, I know. I think I did record it on Blab, and and it ended up being a great troubleshooting session. So it lives. What are you gonna do? That's part of the live video. But I didn't record the HD version because it just didn't make any sense. It was a complete mess, and it wouldn't have made sense on the HD version because there was a lot of going back and forth and a lot of like silence and feedback and all that stuff. So it didn't make any sense. So. Anyway, so we've been doing this, 18 weeks officially now? And, to a lot of people, that's a long time. That's doing math, that's almost 4 months, right? Is it 4 months? Something like that. About 4.5 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.5 months. So it's amazing how time flies, right? So lots of times when people get started with this stuff, creating content for the first time, they say, why am I not getting an audience? What? And they do like 2 episodes, and they wonder why aren't they attracting an audience? And Mark, you can talk to this, right? I mean, how long you've been doing YouTube videos, sports-related YouTube videos? And I remember the day you came to me and say, I want to start a YouTube channel. This was like 5 or 6 years ago now.
This was in January of 2010. So this was right at the conclusion of the 2009 college football season. Probably not the best time for a college football person to be starting a YouTube channel at the end of the college football season. I do tell people, and I was on a sports show over the weekend in Los Angeles, that one of the reasons I named my channel Mark Rogers TV, because people say, well, you got a college football channel. Why didn't you go with college football something? And I really like the name College Football Coast to Coast. But the reason I went with Mark Rogers TV is I wanted a free reign to talk about whatever I wanted to talk about out of the gate. So I didn't know what direction I was going to go in. And I figured I might as well brand my own self and go with the personal branding. So I started that. And then, that was January of 2010.
So you've been doing it for a while. And one of the things I asked you right off the bat, because you started with you had no YouTube account, you had really no knowledge at all, even on the technical side. At least you are a wealth of knowledge on the content side, and you're prepared and ready to go there. But on the technical side, you were just starting out. You were starting from zero. So one of the things I remember I was asking you 2 things. One, are you really passionate about your subject matter? And 2, are you willing to do it for free? Because the whole making money part came up very early. Is this something that I could put out content? Maybe I can get advertising, whatever. And I kind of put the brakes on that early on. and asked you those two questions, and you said yes. And when you said yes to those, I knew, okay, let's do this, because I knew you were going to stick with it long term. And I think your story is a great lesson for everybody out there who may be starting Blab shows and may be wondering after, and you could be doing it for a couple months even, and like, where are the people? And this is why we talk about, you really want to talk about subject matters that are, first of all, that you want to talk about, that you're interested in, and two, that you have some knowledge in, because especially if you want to, kind of build some thought leadership around that particular niche or topic, you really got to know your stuff. So that's very, very important. So consistency, why is that important? Well, that's really the only way you're going to attract audience, right? And I want to point out something, and I was going to bring up the website, but I'm not even going to bother with that right now. I stream to, and we talked about this before, I stream to multiple what's called CDNs, or content delivery networks. So YouTube is one that you see in the Blab right here, live. That's one CDN. That's a content delivery network. I'm able to transmit my video HD, good sound. Also stream to other ones. I use BitGravity on btslive.com. So that's what you see on that site. In fact, I've been starting to restream my replays and kind of treating that as a 24/7 channel on the website. So anytime you visit, you'll see video running. That comes from BitGravity. That's another CDN. That's a paid CDN. And then I also stream to a couple other services, stream.me, which is mainly video games, but what we stream, it's available. Stream to Daily Motion, which is, I think, an underutilized channel. It's a YouTube, basically very much like YouTube, but I think it's a French company, but very underutilized, not very crowded, and you're able to stream live to there as well as post videos. And then there's another service I stream to. Well, I stream to Ustream, which just got bought out by IBM, but Ustream's been around for a long time, very high quality service. I just use the free service for them. And then I also stream to a service called streamup.com. And I noticed today, and I've been streaming to them not very long. I mean, I think I got lucky on this, but not too long. But I've been streaming 24/7 replays along with my live shows, along with Mark and myself doing this live show. But what I noticed today, and I think it says a lot about the video space, is I'm on the featured page. And not that necessarily my content is all that great, or whatever, but I just think that this whole space is starving for content, at least serious content. So that was kind of cool because, again, if you're consistent and if you're producing content that's high quality and something you know about and something you're enthusiastic about, these services are out there and they want to work with you. They, Stephen Haywood and I have had this discussion many, many times. And Stephen's light years ahead of me as far as his audience and what he's doing. And a lot of my inspiration comes from him and what he does on the techbuzz.net and his, syndicating to multiple CDNs and the idea of getting your content out to multiple places at the same time. And again, we talked about it in previous shows as far as how you can do that with limited bandwidth. But I want to point that out because there's a lot of services out there that are just starving for good content. And you could be if you have content, if you have something to say and you want to do it in a high, professional way, high quality way, put some effort into it, make sure they're prepared to come on with your content. There's a lot of services out there that, they need good content. So I bring that up because Mark and I, we're doing this. We started doing this for fun, and we still do, but so it was a huge surprise. But I think it's mainly because a lot of these services are really starved for content. So I would advise people, keep sticking to it, keep doing it, because these services, these platforms, they want to partner with you just like you want to partner with them. So they have something that you could use, you have something they could use. So it's a nice partnership there. So that's very, very important. The other thing I want to bring up is on Blab itself, you'll notice how we're doing our show with the embed. A lot of this stuff is evolving. I mean, Mark, I know you see it all the time. You started on Hangouts, now you're in the Blab, and I'm sure you've seen it where, just from your perspective, how this stuff is evolving, and every time you come back, maybe there's another change or something new coming out. I don't know how that's affected you and how you approach shows. Do you have input on that?
Well, in regards to Google Hangouts, if we go back to that, that's been kind of my model since I started, is going on Google Hangouts because I bring in bloggers and broadcasters and do that. And YouTube for a long time, not so much recently, but that whole connection between YouTube and Google Plus, all the various platforms, Gmail, and the way they want to make that synergy happen caused for all sorts of issues, at least on my end, and for anybody out there, just in regards to understanding. And I was using these things every day, and I jump on every day and there'd be something different, or trying to educate people on how to jump into a video call. I got to a point where I just send out the link. Just send out the link, make it easy on them, because if you try to educate people, and YouTube is changing the platform and changing the interface almost daily, and it was very confusing and very frustrating at times. In regards to Blab, I have seen some changes, and some of those changes have kind of knocked me out of the ability to just jump on and access something or start my own Blab, where it almost treats me as a new user sometimes. It's kind of strange, but the issue with Blab has just been more so the bandwidth, and I may get this completely wrong from a technical standpoint, but it seems like it's related to bandwidth knocking certain people off. So when I've had 3 and 4 person shows, I've noticed, not so much the last few weeks, but there was a pocket of like 2 or 3 weeks where the audio, we had issues, and we had issues with filling up the boxes, and then suddenly somebody couldn't connect, and we would jump on Google Hangouts immediately after, and we found out it wasn't any one person's issues in terms of internet connectivity or our own audio issues, but it was Blab trying to work some things through.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a really good point about Blab and kind of what their approach is as far as developing in public and beta in public. And again, using technology, WebRTC technology, which is still an evolving technology. It's basically in-browser video, which makes Blab possible and makes it so simple. So yeah, that's the thing also, is that, you know, a lot of folks that are in the room right now on Blab watching this show or on the other CDNs, we're all kind of new to, you know, we're all kind of paving the way here, you know, in a way. And people that are brave enough that put themselves out there, you're really paving the way. So, you know, be aware that this stuff changes frequently, and you're kind of all beta testers. We're all beta testers with live video, frankly. And I noticed a comment from Tommy in the thing. Steven is restreaming this, and I want to thank Steven. We set this up in advance, where Steven has been generous enough to restream this show on his CDNs, techbuzz.net. So we're getting a little larger audience than normal. And so this is the kind of thing you can do when you work together. Steve and I talk about this all the time. It's really more about we than me. And this is the thing that people really don't get, which is amazing. And here's a tip for you. The idea that we're all in competition is kind of a false idea. Steven and I both do tech shows. We both do video style shows about video, about broadcasting. And you figure that, oh man, would we be nervous about competing with each other, right? You know, Mark's shaking his head. You know, he knows about this stuff. But really, think about this. I mean, people that are interested in this topic, I mean, for me, I could watch this stuff all day. I love video. I love tech. In fact, Apple, we just had the Apple keynote today, right? So Mark knows this. I'm an Apple fanboy from way back. You know, I can watch this stuff all day. So what do? I don't just listen to one broadcast or one podcast about Apple. I listen to a bunch of them. And the reason for that is everyone brings something else different to the table, right? So what Mark and I are doing is different than what Steven does. In fact, the only thing left on my agenda is to get Steven to come on this show. And I know he works full time, so that is a little difficult. We'll figure this out, how to get him on or do a special show. But Steven is, and I know I talk about him all the time, but the guy is just amazing, generous. He totally gets it, and he's, you know, kind enough to have me on his show. We work together, and that's what's great, because I think a lot of people here, you know, they're watching this show. I think a lot of people tonight will watch the weekly roundup, Steven's show, and even on Tuesday night, Steven does a Broadcast Now show, a more hardcore broadcast show. a lot of people that are into different niches can't get enough, right? It's like the sports niche, right, Mark? I mean, you know the sports talk show niche. Talk shows are perfect for sports because a lot of it's opinion, and there's a million talk shows out there, and you figure, well, why would all these people be afraid of competing, right? But they all bring something a little different to the table, including what you're doing, right? Or even on the network level.
I find it interesting what you said just a few minutes ago about competition, because I've certainly partnered with a number of people in the past that have been afraid of extending our brand and what we're doing and our content onto other platforms, or allowing them to come onto our platform. And that's a ridiculous way to approach business and relationships. I would mention, let's say I've been on certain teams with a group of content creators producing videos and producing writing, and they would find out I'm going to go on this radio show, and they would be covering the same conference, the same teams, and the same content, and they would have an issue with that, or they would have an issue with me moving our video to another platform and say, well, why are you providing content for them? They're our competition. Okay. We are branding ourselves over multiple platforms, and this is free advertising. So this is what we want to do. It's just it's just an old archaic style of thinking that had some relevance at one time, but certainly doesn't now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and also we hear a lot about personality-driven shows, right? So it doesn't have to be about tech. It could be about knitting, or it could be about car mechanics or whatever. There's a lot of, and every niche has their shows, have their content, but it's the individuals that are actually presenting the content. If you can do it in an entertaining, informative way, people are going to connect with you. And this is what's exciting about these platforms, excuse me, like Blab and these other streaming platforms, because you get interaction. I'm seeing, there's a whole show going on in the comments there. And forgive me, I'm trying to keep up with the comments. I don't know how Stephen Haywood does it. He makes it look very easy with staying with the comments. He runs 2 chat rooms. He's not only on Blab, but he runs the IRC chat room. And for some, I don't know how he does it. He stays on top of it, and he brings in, he's able to parse the comments. We talked a little bit about that before, but I'm seeing some great comments there. One comment I do want to mention is people mentioning the YouTube delay, and just to explain why that is. YouTube and the reason for the delay is to make sure that there is little or no buffering. So if it was completely real time, what would happen is that every time there was a hiccup in the internet transmission, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the back end, you'd see buffering. So what YouTube does is they not only, when I send them the stream, they encode it into various resolutions, and then they put it on their servers, and they take care of the buffer. So that's why you see 15 seconds. In fact, it used to be a lot longer. I think it's 15 seconds now on the live product that I'm using. But that's why you see the delay, and that's why you see nothing else in the Blab that we're in other than the window. So hopefully, it makes it a little less disconcerting, and makes it a little bit more of a seamless experience. But Mark, just to put a kind of a bow on what I was talking about here, is we talk a lot about these streaming platforms and these video platforms and how things, and you mentioned it, how things are changing, almost on a daily basis, and due to technology, due to building these platforms out. But I think a key word here is experimentation. So just like we're doing here in Blab with the video drop in, experiment, try stuff out. This is stuff, we're on a cutting edge here. So don't be afraid to try it out, get some feedback. Don't take it personally, but get that feedback, try it out, see what works, see what doesn't work. Again, these are early days here, so there's no reason why you can't experiment. And this is a lot of stuff that we've been doing for our show here has been experimentation, right, Mark? We've gone through our trials and tribulations as far as what services we want to use. Do we want to bring you in via Google Hangouts? Do we want to do it on Blab only? How do we want to approach this? All the tech issues that we've gone through, mainly because we're not afraid to experiment, understanding them moving forward. And again, moving that ball down the field in a positive way, and always improving. I mean, that's really what you want to strive for, you know. And again, to kind of address, and I know I get this question a lot, as far as, you know, people on Blab, why do you go through all this trouble producing this HD feed? Why don't you just do it on Blab? Well, it's more about the big picture here with the content creation. Is I take the approach of, okay, I'm gonna take ownership of my content. Mark and I are gonna create this show, and then we're gonna get it out there. And really, the main reason why Blab is part of the mix, and I got to give a huge shout out to the folks at Blab, is one thing they've nailed, in my opinion, and I think folks, you guys can agree, is the community aspect. They are definitely trying to build this out technically, and they got a lot of challenges ahead of them trying to build this out. You know, even the search, you know, there's been a lot of talk about that, but the technical aspects aside, and that's a huge part of this. But the community aspect, frankly, I mean, they got it nailed, and that's what attracted me and still attracts me to the folks here on Blab, is that look at we got in the comments here. I don't look at the number. You know, we have 28 people in the room here. We've had 84 come through. That's great, but it's more about what's happening in the sidebar. As far as the comments, you guys are interacting with each other. Hopefully, I'll get better interacting in real time with the comments. It's, you know, I have a little bit of a challenge because I'm producing the show and looking at the comments. So I'm not going to be typing a lot, but I'm hopefully referencing the comments and get better at that as I go, as I get this workflow nailed down. But that's what really makes this really special, is what's going on here. And I'm looking at the comments right now. I mean, that's just phenomenal, you know. And I've met so many great people here. I know Mark has too. Mark, you do your show, Mark and Macy, on Blab. I think you use that as your production platform exclusively for that show. And you're building a fan base. You had Pat Maldowney, a former colleague of ours, on. That was a great show. In fact, we got to get Pat on our show. People would love to. Pat is very social savvy. I think he senior manager of social media at Fox Sports.
Yeah, he is. So Pat, going way back, has been all over social media and very savvy, as Marty mentioned. So it's not a big mystery as to him going out to Fox Sports and getting a social media job out there and then rising through the ranks. So yeah, currently senior manager of social media out in LA. So he'd be a great person to bring on this show. And we had him on our last Mark and Macy show last Thursday night. And we had a great time.
Absolutely. And just, again, referencing some of the comments, you guys have been fantastic back there. And Anna mentions having co-hosts will help some of that as well. Absolutely. We have tremendous support here in our community, and that's what makes it, you know, people are helping us out there in the chat, which is fantastic. And I think it's a work in progress. Night Rider, it absolutely is a work in progress. You guys are all the early adopters here. And that, again, this is what makes it really, really fun. So
I got to say, Knight Rider is just between this show and the Mark and Macy show, he's all over it, helping us, supporting us. He makes a comment just recently that Pat was a great guest. He was a great guest. The only thing that wasn't so great was between Pat and Macy, they picked on my lack of technical knowledge and social media savvy. So they had some fun with that. But yeah, we had a good time.
I was watching that show. It was hilarious because Pat is very. I mean, it's funny because when we worked with Pat, it was very early on in the social media landscape of things, and Pat was besides I was like an early adopter. So nobody I knew that worked at ESPN had any kind of social presence or any of that stuff. But Pat, man, he got right out there. He got involved early on. And what's great about Pat is he used to work in network integration at ESPN, basically kind of a traffic cop in Master Control. In a brief explanation of what it is, there's a lot more to it, but the brief explanation. But then he got very involved in social. He's perfect for that. I mean, my God, he's like Mr. Social. He's out in LA. Well, he's out in LA with Fox Sports. He's living the life, the Hollywood life. So we got to have him on because that would be a great show.
Oh yeah, so, it will be.
Absolutely. I think we're going to put a bow on it. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and I know, Mark, you have to get going. So we're going to thanks everyone for your patience with us. Hopefully this was a good show, and we did a little better job this week. Go ahead, Mark.
So Marty is a little bit of a teaser. I was all prepared for once. I was actually somewhat prepared here with a few notes, because what we did the last time, we actually put together a show that we could be proud of and put out there, not counting the last show where we had the tech issues. I was starting everyone on the journey through the Mark and Macy show experience. So I kind of thought conceptually that I could knock this down in 3 parts. So the build up of the show and selecting a host, finding someone you can trust, building that rapport and focusing on content and topics. And then part 2 today, or it's going to be next week now, we'll focus on where we stand right now and all the social media platforms that we're on and everything we're trying to get going. And then the future, the goal, the build out that we're hoping to plan down the road. And just so this is definitely a work in progress. So I will not be preaching at anybody for these 3 weeks by any stretch, because this is stuff that I will want feedback from everybody out there. So talk about community. I need community. Marty and I need community when it comes to these topics, and me specifically in building out this show. So I will be looking forward to everybody's feedback and discussing what we're doing currently on that show and what we could be doing going forward.
Absolutely, well said. Yeah, next week we're going to focus on your experiences for sure, and that's we only touched on it in the beginning before we had the huge disaster 2 weeks ago. But a week before that, you got, like you said, you got into kind of the background information as far as how you got started. But there's a lot more to it than that, and I think your experiences I think would help, especially the folks that watch us on Blab. Folks that are just starting out with this stuff, I think it would be great. So yeah, look, folks, next week's going to be a great show, because Mark has a ton of experience to share, especially from a fairly new user of video, someone that has a wealth of knowledge in a particular subject area, has great, you're obviously a professional on camera, you have professional experience, but then putting it all together for yourself, I think that's where the real great story comes in, and I know you have a lot to share, so we'll get into that certainly next week.
So Marty, to a guy that I know at one point in time was a fantasy baseball player, yourself, a GM, no longer has time to deal with such frivolous tasks, and I haven't played fantasy baseball for, actually people are shocked by this, that I've never played fantasy football. I have people coming to me on a weekly basis during football season asking me for fantasy football advice, and I've never played. Love the NFL, love college football, just don't play fantasy. But I've used to play fantasy baseball. But Macy's all excited about a fantasy baseball league. So we have a Mark and Macy Fantasy Baseball League. Mark and Macy's show is the official title, Baseball League. And so we're holding our draft. Our show this Thursday at 7 o'clock on Blab is just going to be our fantasy baseball draft. We're going to hold a live draft, and that's going to be the show. Oh
man, that's I don't know if you have the link, and I'm not sure if you can pop that in. If you ever pop that into the chat, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I haven't established the show yet. That's what
no worries. Look for that, guys, because that's going to be a lot of fun. Anybody who plays fantasy sports, seeing Mark and Macy, and again, we talked about chemistry. I think one of the things I notice is you guys are definitely developing a lot of chemistry. The more you do it, the more you do the show. Both of you are very enthusiastic, but that should be a lot of fun, because you don't know what's going to happen there with the draft and everything. So I would definitely, folks, if you're interested in fantasy sports, especially baseball, seek out. Just search. I mean, Mark, are you Mark Rogers TV on Blab? What's your?
Yeah, Mark Rogers TV. And if you'd like to participate in the Fantasy Baseball League, we still have a few open spots. So you can either go to my Twitter, Mark Rogers TV, or go to Macy Golder on Twitter. Tag either one of us. She's the commissioner, so I'm just going to pass your name on to her anyway. But contact either one of us, or better yet, follow us on Twitter at Mark and Macy Show. Let us know that you want to play some fantasy baseball, and we'll get you on a spot.
That sounds like a good invitation to me. And before we go, I just want to point out Tommy, who's a troublemaker in the chat, said he missed all my stuff, and can I repeat everything during the show? Yes. See, that's why I love this community. We got some comedians out there. Anyways, it was a great show. Mark, thank you as always. To kind of rolling with the punches here, because when I make these notes, I never know where this is going to go. So hopefully,
you know how I conduct my show, Marty.
Yes,
shoot from the hip. So I have no issue with any of this.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Want to point out that if I was better prepared, I'd have the actual screenshot for you. But we do have a Facebook group. I'm sure it's been in the chat a couple times already. But on Facebook.com. /search BTS Live. I believe that's the title. See how bad am I? That I don't know my own Facebook group. Let's see. And of course I'm not logged in here. So maybe I am. No, I'm not logged in, so I can't go in there. Oh well. Anyways, I think Barb put it in the perfect. Barb put it in the chat. Search BTS Live on Facebook if you want to join. It's open to everybody. We encourage you to join. That's what's great about the group is we do the show once a week on 2:00 on Mondays, but the conversation continues all week in the group, and it's a great group there. I think we're well past 100 members, and it's just great people there, great discussion. We get a lot of ideas from the group. If you guys have ideas of things you want us to cover on the show, join the group, pop them in there. It's a great group. Barb Tomlin, want to give a special shout out to Barb. She's the one that very early on in our show history, I think like week 2 or maybe even week 1, she came up with the idea of starting the Facebook group. She's taken that on. She started it. She's an administrator of the group. She does a tremendous job, incredibly generous person. If you see her on Blab, she's very active, just a great person, very knowledgeable. And Barb, you're great, and we just really, really appreciate everything you've done or continue to do for the BTS Live community. It's just great. So big shout out to Barb. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. We will be back next week, same time, same station, BTS Live, 2:00 Eastern Time on Mondays. Mark, it was a pleasure as always. We will see you again next week.
Definitely.